Hello, friends. Welcome again to our YouTube channel, Missions with Accent. Today, I want to introduce you to our dear friend, Timo Trudо, who is part of the ministry of Church Multiplication Mission. He will tell us about what is the burden that is in our hearts, what is the reason why we need more churches in our area, and also how we can fulfill that purpose. God bless you.
Hello, I'm Timo Trudо with Church Multiplication Mission, and I want to speak with you for a few minutes about the biblical foundation for church planting. I had a mentor whom I loved who was very passionate about church planting, and he believed that the reason for church planting was because new churches were most effective in evangelism. In fact, he had this pretty crazy idea that any church over 10 years old should be closed. And we should always just be starting new churches because as a church became settled and people became comfortable, they lost their passion for reaching the lost with the gospel. As a pastor, I hope that's not true. I pastor a church that's now over 20 years old, and I hope our people still are loving their neighbors and have a vision to bring the gospel to their neighbors, and are reaching out and living the gospel out every day in their workplace or school, and are leading people to Christ and bringing them to the church to be discipled. And I think it is happening in our church to some degree, and I hope in many churches. So I don't think that can be the foundation really for church planting, evangelism, though it's a great goal and end. Really, the motivation comes in the Great Commission, where we're commanded to go and make disciples of all nations, men, women, and children, from every tribe and tongue and language and nation. We're called to go and make disciples by spreading a passion for the knowledge to the glory of God until the knowledge of the glory of God covers the earth as the waters cover the sea. We exist for one purpose: to reach our neighbors and the nations, to exalt Christ, who is worthy of all our praise. But disciples, as we go and fulfill this command, thrive as they're gathered together in relationship with other believers. We are made for community. The Bible doesn't know anything of Christians who exist apart from the Christian community. When someone comes to faith in Christ, they are baptized into the Christian community, as Matthew 28 says, and then they are taught in the Christian community. We're built for relationship, and so the model and mandate for believers is to gather together in relationship. The organism for this relationship is called the church. It's the church where they're taught. It's the church where believers discover and learn to use their gifts and serve. It's the church where they come under the authority of the leaders, the elders, and the discipline of the church. It's where they hear the word preached. It's where they are encouraged and strengthened. It's where they have a vision cast before them to go and make other disciples. And it's the church then that has a vision from one church to plant another church to plant another church, as disciples are made in one place, and then they go to another region of the city, maybe, or to the next village, and go to evangelize and make disciples and gather them into churches so they may grow and thrive. This is the model in the book of Acts. We read in Acts chapter 11, verse 26, Barnabas went to Tarsus to look for Saul, and when he'd found him, he brought him to Antioch, and for a whole year they met with the church and taught a great many people. And in Antioch, the disciples were first called Christians. So you have these three key terms all together in this passage: disciples, Christians, the church. There's really no distinction. If you're a disciple of Jesus Christ, you are a follower of Christ, a Christian, and you are brought into the church. And this is where we are taught and instructed and grow. It's the same in Acts chapter 14. It says, when they, Paul and his disciples with him, had preached the gospel to Derbe and made many disciples, they returned to Lystra and Iconium and Antioch, strengthening the souls of the disciples and encouraging them to continue in the faith. And they appointed elders for them in every church. With prayer and fasting, they committed them to the Lord, in whom they had believed. This was Paul's method. He would go into a place and he would find someone who seemed open to the gospel, the first believers would come to faith, discipleship happens, and then a church is created. And he goes back to strengthen the church and to set up leaders in the church, because this is the relationship between discipleship, which is our command, and the church, which is God's means for his glory to go forth in this world at this time. All throughout Acts, Paul is making disciples, gathering them into churches. He's assigning elders. He's training them in gifts. He's sending them out to plant other churches. When he comes to return, he doesn't come to disciples as in individuals he visits. He comes to the church where they've been gathered together into one place, into one family. His letters are written to the church in Ephesus, to the church in Colossae. So maybe I'm overstating a point that is obvious. For Paul and for us, the work of disciple making, to which we're commanded, is the work of planting churches where these disciples are gathered and where they thrive. We target neighborhoods maybe that are near us. We target regions of a city where there are no churches, where the gospel needs to go forth, or we target a village outside, or we target a neighboring nation, and our goal is to bring the gospel by making disciples and gathering them into churches. We call them to be reconciled to God, to come to faith, to follow Christ, and then they're brought into a community where they are taught and encouraged and strengthened in the faith and fashioned according to the image of Christ, which is the goal, that they might display him in their neighborhoods and reach their friends with the gospel. And so the church continues until that great day when Christ returns to his glory.